Victor Sensei to start.
Me? Yes,
Yes, please.
Just a quick background. I started Kendo back in 1978, one of the founding members over at UBC Kendo Club under Okusa Sensei. And I practiced with them for about 5 years. And then career started and got married. And somewhere along the line, Kendo just took the wayside. And for a long time, I hadn't practiced. And then in '89, I moved up to Kelowna to start a restaurant. And Kendo was just never a thought until I sold the restaurant 10 years later in 1990. And there was a local martial arts karate sensei who had opened up what he called the Kelowna Traditional Martial Arts Center. And what his idea was to take a lot of different types of Japanese Budo in one roof under one umbrella organization and try to get as much membership as possible. And this was done in a purpose-built dojo funded by the owners of the Big White Ski Resort. So it's probably one of the nicest looking dojo facilities in Canada and probably not very well known outside of maybe Kelowna. So I heard about this new Kendo club being established and I was interested. I had more free time now and I joined them as a member. And so a lot of beginners there. The head instructor at that time was a Korean fellow, and he had a lot of contacts in the Korean community in Kelowna. So most of the students were of Korean background. So we practiced for a year there, but we found over time that the membership fees, because this was a for-profit organization, it was quite prohibitive compared to a lot of other Kendo clubs in Canada. So we decided to split off and find our own dojo. And that is another challenge in itself. We're trying to find a facility in a small area can be. So from there, our membership fees went down and we were able to get sponsorship through Okusa Sensei and then become a CKF member club. So what would I say? Challenges has always been membership. Just trying to get people to come out and retain them has been a challenge. Financial challenges, like Kyle Sensei, there are times when there will only be 2 of us in the dojo, but we're still paying for that room in our community center. So that was always a challenge. But over the years, we had core students that became better instructors. And one of the things that did push me was, at that time, I was just Nidang and an old recycled Nidang. So I had to relearn myself as well. So if I couldn't learn to upgrade myself, then how can I teach anybody else? So that was one of the challenges here. And to be able to do that, because of where we're located, I had to travel to Vancouver, or we had guest people coming in from other dojos from outside the area. So geography always played a prohibitive point in trying to establish a dojo.
Yeah. Thank you. And we'll go on to Wilson.
Hi. So yeah, so I don't have a fancy story or anything like that. It was quite simple how I ended up kind of with our dojo. So I ended up taking over the dojo from my previous senpai, Frank Simmons. I think he practiced it out of London actually at one point. So he was here as a medical student and was administering the dojo at the time. There was only a few members at that point. The club had kind of started to slip into decline. Most of the times there was only three of us in a gym. So much like Kali Sensei's stories, practicing sometimes on your own alone in a gym. But it was, even though it was maybe only one or two of us, my senpai who were showing me, you know, the basics, Kihon and stuff like that, they took a lot of time and care to teach me everything that they could. So I kept coming out, and I was looking for something like Kendo at the time, because I was transitioning from basically my university or high school, like my kind of like my education to the workforce and that kind of stuff. And being in Newfoundland, sometimes that's a big question mark, because you finish university and you often say, well, where do I go from here? Because there's not a whole lot of opportunities sometimes. And a lot of people end up leaving for turnaround work or going abroad to other places, Toronto and Alberta and places like that. And so yeah, so Kendo just happened to be something that really aligned with my interests and my philosophies about things. So I stayed with the dojo for a long time, and at some point in time, Frank's residency was coming to an end, and he said, would you like to take over? Him entrusting me with that was something very big for me. So I decided very, very early on that I would commit as much as I could to keeping it going. You know, it was very much a vehicle for my own transformation and improvement and that kind of stuff. And it helped me learn and grow a lot. So I decided very early on that as long as I was here, I would try to keep it going. I guess I had a little bit of an adage to kind of see me through some of the challenges. I might be getting ahead of the conversation a little bit to the questions later, but it was as long as I'm here, there'll be Kendo. not so much in the literal sense, but more in the existential sense, right? If I can be here and doing Kendo, then I'll be here doing Kendo for those who want to also do it, because my senpai showed me a lot of kindness in that, and I want to be there for anybody else who wants to kind of come to it. So taking over the dojo was something I wasn't sure if I was ready for it, especially at that time. So like a lot of the other, there was a lot of similar kind of, I guess, challenges taking it over and running it. Like it's been talked about, recruitment and retention. How do we keep members? How do we keep people coming into the door? Because you quickly cycle through a lot of your potentials. Often you might be restarting every 6 to 8 months, or there may be days where you're going into the dojo to practice, expecting 4 or 5 people there, and sometimes it's just the empty gym. So that was sometimes challenging in that. But I definitely think to kind of combat that, like just being persistent with it, being ready to really kind of put yourself out there for certain things, like putting yourself on the line for covering gym costs, or putting yourself out there for covering the extra time maybe to help people get out there, you know, whether it's your own personal time, things like that.
Yeah, that's a wonderful mindset you have, and a great quote that we can use for a lot of people. So that finishes us our starting a dojo, and I'm sure our panelists have a lot more that they can share. So if you have any questions about starting a dojo, please put it in the chat. But we're going to move on to sustaining and growing. We've talked about the past. Let's talk about the future. In this case, I want to move. We started off going east to west. I'm going to go west to east. And so the question is, how do you maintain, and how are you thinking about the future of Kendo in your area? In some ways, you could say, how are you thinking about growing students to become leaders themselves? How do you find people, crazy people like Wilson or David Westhead, with like the Kendo Baka, and like just saying, if I'm here, it's going to exist? How are you thinking about growing in the future? So let's start off with Victor.
Yeah, we're 4 hours away from Vancouver, and for us to make a trip down to Vancouver to join a dojo for practice, it involves taking time off and some dedication on our own schedule and financially. So we decided, why don't we try to bring some people from Vancouver and from Alberta to Kelowna. So for 10 years in a row, we hosted a summer gashuku. And that way we were able to bring a lot of members, up to 50 people at one time. And mostly university students from SFU, UVic, UBC, there was Langara later, and then also members from Edmonton, Saskatoon, Matskai. And we try to make it financially cheap. So I decided we're going to have tents in my backyard. So it was like a tent village for a while during that week. So this way, our club, which I had probably a membership of about 10 people, can attract 40 other people and have that nice integration and learn from each other and practice against people that we've never practiced with. Because part of the problem with a small dojo is you practice with the same people week in, week out, and you get to know them very well, and you get to know their moves very well. So it's very predictable kendo. That way, with all the new influx of students of various levels and senseis of various levels, we were able to develop our own dojo that way. So bringing in people from other areas was key to our growth. As far as advertising or trying to recruit new members, we became members of the Kelowna Kasugai Sister City Association. And that allowed us to do demonstrations in their Japanese-oriented events. But on another side note, that allowed us to become a nonprofit organization, so we could get a reduced rate for a rental as well. But yeah, so that I think Ariga Sensei mentioned in his seminar earlier that he felt he has limited resources in living in LA, and he doesn't have the luxury of Hachidan Sensei's daily, like if you were in Japan. Well, I would take Ariga Sensei's comment and just sort of multiply that by 100, and you'll get a feeling of how Kendo life in Kelowna is. So that's yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great point about trying to expand the number of people you get to practice with. And your role is to make it as easy as possible for them to be there. So whether it's setting up tents for people to stay or making it cheap for your students to go travel, that's a great way of thinking about it. Kyle, how are you thinking about growing and maintaining your area?
Yes, so this is my biggest concern, that now that I have a lot of, I have increased amount of students, that maintaining is very, very crucial. But I think I remember Dinara Sensei's presentation last year, 31 principles I live by. I think that was a very great presentation for especially leaders being outside of major Kendo area where we don't get enough culture. And I think maintaining dojo means maintaining the culture. And I think that was a biggest challenge for me, because easily culture can be, it's hard to build it, but easy to disappear at once. So make sure, like, teaching my kids how to, when my kids come to the dojo, when they off the car, in the beginning, they used to just let their parents carry their bogu. Over time, I taught that like over an hour or two, just every day. So they changed that. And I think maintaining that culture is very, very important. So that was my biggest things to maintain outside of the size of the dojo, because that's really hard to build. And I really appreciate all the, like Ontario, BC, or Quebec for strong Kendo communities to build it. And that's the first thing. In terms of growing Kendo population here, I think including kids and adults, what we most look for is the challenge and achievement, right? You have to have something to challenge, and you have to have some achievement. So definitely what we lack here in Alberta was a number of tournaments, or like Nishi Sensei said, we're practicing with the same people all over again. So what we did was to collaboration with other dojos like Edmonton Kendo Club and Calgary Kendo Club to have a joint practices. And as well as like one of my former students moved to Lethbridge. It's a small city in Alberta, and he started Kendo Club there. So I was going there to help them grow. So now there's about 10 students. And I just know that in Edmonton area, there's recently the new Kendo Club, a Sturgeon Kendo Club came in. So I think I really give kudos to Edmonton Kendo people, to instructors to grow. And I think in terms of growing Kendo in minor area. It's really to grow core members and really let them start their own dojo, right? There's a lot of challenges and there's a lot of errors and trials, but I think that's the only way to for leaders to learn by themselves. And I think that's part of the Kendo journey, is to passing what I have learned to the next generation. So I think that was the thing that we're trying to thrive, plus grading and the tournaments and a lot of seminars.
Yeah, that's a wonderful point about building that foundational culture in your dojo, encouraging the kids in different ways. It reminds me of this quote that I really like is, if you want to gather people to build a boat, don't teach them how to build, but tell them or make them feel the yearning of the sea. So make them want to go to the sea, and that'll automatically get them to build things. Let's move on to David. How are you trying to maintain and grow your area?
I think you segued perfectly into something that I believe quite deeply about. I used to spend a lot of time trying to recruit how, maybe the website's not big enough, or maybe we're not visual enough, or maybe we need to do demonstrations in schools, or maybe we need, and it goes on and on and on and on. Now that the club itself, the dojo, has reached, I would say our carrying capacity, we're not a professional club. We don't take money from it. Everybody pays their dues, and we're maintaining. I think a lot of people might resonate with the idea of having a little bit left over for that barbecue or that Christmas party, or enough to maybe compensate that sensei to come into maybe enlighten or enrich the curriculum that we're teaching. But it might come as some shock, but I've stopped actually recruiting, and I've changed my stance on how I attract students to the dojo. Now, I should preface that by saying we are visual to the community. Obviously, we're in a community center. People do know we're there. We have an online presence, as well as something on Facebook, but I don't actively go out and recruit anymore. I found it more worthwhile to invest my energy on the one individual that comes through the door, instead of trying to convince the 100 that maybe this is not what they want to spend their time on. Be the flame, not the moth, was sort of the words I kind of decided I was going to live by. How I maintain this spirit inside the dojo, I'm very fortunate, I must say. I have 5, 6 yondan at the moment, players that have come in from South Korea or the Toronto area that are call Winnipeg their home and call Tesshin their dojo now. So within our environment, we have a lot of spirit. There's a lot to see at Tesshin Dojo, sort of in relationship to what's going on elsewhere in Winnipeg, in other sports. Or if you came through the door and you didn't know what Kendo was, I think you would get a good helping of Kendo. So I personally try to help people find their yearning of the sea, as you say. I phrase it as to find your why. We don't focus so much on the glory of the ippon or your taisho winning the encho match or anything like this, but we do focus on the process, and we focus on making sure that your body gets through the doors on time, and that your shoes are lined up on time, and that our seiza and our back and we're straight, and all of these things lead to perfection. And we try to focus on those, and within that, we just have a good spirited attitude. And my personal belief is that when you do hit the ippon, or you do collect a strike, if your partner at the time doesn't feel some sense of joy or rejuvenation in your success in that, then the spirit of the whole thing was wrong. We like to see the dojo with a lot of sweaty people leaving, and also a lot of smiles and I'll see you in 2 days, that kind of spirit. So that has been our key to maintenance in community. Work hard, try hard, and you must feel good about going in the right direction.
Yeah, thank you. That's very inspiring. And Wilson, I know you mentioned earlier on that that area you don't get a new influx of people. So it's how do you think about keeping it going and finding others that can carry on this flame?
Yeah, so I feel, while everybody else has been talking, I feel a little bit like a bobblehead, because I'm like, yes, I like it's interesting to see just how much there is similar, despite being geographically separated by so much. And that and it's challenging to keep people, retain people, because Newfoundland's kind of like the throughfare. you're never usually sometimes staying here. So like I grew up in a community like in the outports, and I would never have known what kendo was growing up. Nowadays, there are more people that are more active and more visual on things like digital media and stuff like that. So we did for a long time, we didn't even really promote the club. I was kind of just like, it's here and people will find it if they're interested for a long time, because also that was when I was Mudansha running a dojo. I was like, what am I doing here? So for a long time, I didn't have the confidence to promote the club as a widespread thing. And eventually I did start relying on things like, promoting through Facebook, promoting through flyers, demonstrations at like the university and stuff like that, trying to target demographics that may be interested or open to wanting to come out and try it. So at that point, it was just trying to fill the space, really. To, if you throw a whole lot of stuff at the wall, something eventually sticks. Trying to just get people through the door and seeing if somebody just happens to, a happy accident, they find the thing that they're looking for. And that was kind of how it was focused on very early on. But I found over time, it's actually kind of moved towards much like what Westhead Sensei was saying. Once you get some of those people in the door and you can see who's enthusiastic for it and who's looking for their why and why they're doing it, kind of focusing on those people, and when you have people who are enthusiastic, that enthusiasm can be contagious for some of them. So there's a few students that I can think of over the few years that have stuck with it alongside me and things like that. And it's thanks to their enthusiasm that they bring in more people too. And when people come through the door thinking, well, I have no idea what this experience is going to be like, when you're seeing this authentic experience, like, like you're saying, just even the little things, shoes lined up, people offering to carry, like, do you need help carrying this in? Or, because a lot of the times we're showing up at the community center and I've got a whole cart of things. You can see the box of shinai behind me, because in case anybody's breaking them. So I'm carting in all the gear, and the students are running up and saying, oh, I'll help you. And, just building that right sense of feeling in the dojo is something that when other people come into it, they have a sense of feeling like, I want to be part of this, or I feel like I can belong here. I can feel like, I guess just this compatibility, I guess, or this enthusiasm that can be a bit infectious. And it's still hard to recruit people because, again, it's a small region. You're cycling through the same people very much, but I think we're in a finally in a bit of a stable position now to start doing a little bit more in terms of sending people abroad, finally getting them to have the real kendo experience, like sending students up for grading maybe when it's finally a possibility again, because a lot of the students that I've had that have come through the doors recently have actually come through during COVID, because a lot of things have been stopped. A lot of your regular classes, a lot of your regular activities. So we just happened to hit it lucky in a way where there was a lot of people with a whole lot of time and a whole lot of nothing to do here. So a lot of our conventional campaigning brought a lot of people through the door. And we were fortunate enough to be one of those groups that was able to return early. So we've actually been practicing, so with certain restrictions in place and things like that, but we've actually been practicing since almost last September in person. So we've been fortunate in that regard, because with everything else still shut down and everybody saying we need to get out of the house. So our conventional advertising worked quite well in that sense. But I think a lot of people stuck around because of the enthusiasm that when you build the correct kendo culture in the dojo, even when it's just etiquette, reiho, and just the little things, like you said, that add the details that polish what it feels like.
Thank you so much for that. And it's especially clear that when students come in the door and they see the enthusiasm, especially of our 4 panelists as instructors, they'll feel kind of infected, or kind of wrong word at this point in time, but by that same enthusiasm, and they want to continue. We're going to move on quickly to Q&A. Some of the questions have already been answered. I'm going to choose a few. There was some on recruitment, and I think that because recruiting is very unique to like your local area, we've already gotten a good grasp of whether it's underlying principles that Westhead Sensei mentioned, or like what Wilson Sensei and Kyle have mentioned in terms of attracting new people. I think that we've have recruitment covered. There was a question on what's the lowest rank acceptable to starting a dojo, and I think Wilson already answered that, being someone that had no rank in the beginning. So I'm going to go to one question I thought was interesting, and if any of the panelists have an answer, please raise your hand and I'll call on you. This is a great one from Mark Kawabe. If you weren't there, would your club or dojo continue on? If so, you suddenly disappeared, Thanos did the snap and you fizzled out, would your club still exist? Who wants to start? David.
It would. It would. Well, let's be honest. We're not going to be around forever. And I don't know. My students, as a teacher, my students think I'm ancient. They think I'm really, really old. But then when I get into the kendo realm, a lot of my senpai and senseis that I've connected with over the years, they say, you're so young. You're so young. I'm 48 years old. But within the dojo, we have built a culture that this is for the kids, which I think is the spirit of a kendo club. It is something that we place within the community for the community. And if you're going in and you're extracting everything you possibly need to get to your personal goals, then I think you're missing the point of what it really means to be in a kendo community. So we get struck, we give thanks, we reflect, and it's a relationship. The club needs to be in relationship with the community. The people need to be in relationship with each other. And I hope that when my day comes to, I don't want to say retire, that's never going to happen, but should I move, relocate, the person right below me will say, I know how to do this.
Cool. Well, since you were talking about focus on kids, I know Kyle has a lot of kids in his dojo. He's also doing a lot to support these new dojos. What happens if you disappeared?
So, sorry, let me just get the question straight. Does that mean if I'm gone to like other province, or if I move forever, or if I'm missing like few classes?
Thanos, forever.
Just forever. Okay. I think up to some point, like I was talking about the culture, right? Yes, couple classes they can run it, but I think unless the culture is set and there's some core instructors who can lead, I think that's the time when even if I'm gone, I think it will maintain. But actually, it happened to me once, like 2004. I just started the dojo. It's just more a club, and we had like 30 students. And because I was a high school student, I was teaching. I think I stopped teaching after Kirikash because I had to go to university. But they kept going after 3-4 years, and eventually it was gone. So I think, but I believe now that more culture was set up and maintaining right now. And even if I'm gone, I think it's still gonna run it. So I think that's the biggest challenge. I think outside of number of students or population of Kendo, but I think if there's a culture, right? I think even if I'm gone, I'll be there. But if culture is not set, then I think it will be disappeared. Yeah.
I'm just going to make sure I cover some of the other questions. So we'll start with Wilson and Victor next. This is a great question from Yoko, which is, for the sake of maintenance and retention, has there been times when Kendo values need to be compromised or loosen some of the strict expectations? I'm sure everyone has a good answer to this, but let's start with Victor. Do you have something?
No, I would just say we've never done that. We've always kept the whole part of Kendo always intact. That's part of the instructional part of Kendo anyways. So that part we've never relaxed. The only part that we do relax is the intensity, because our membership tends to be a little bit on the older side. So we just relax a little bit on the intensity in our dojo. So as far as values, no, we don't loosen anything there.
Mm-hmm. And Wilson?
I would probably have to say something fairly similar. Now, in terms of compromising or loosening those, in one sense, so when I started 8 years ago, I may not have actually had full awareness of everything that I needed to observe or all the things. So it was still a path of continuous growth, a journey for me. Just knowing what was right sometimes, or what a kendo practice should be. So very early on, there was not an intentional compromise, but perhaps just an absence of certain things. But over the last 4 years or so, it's definitely come to be the form that it should be. So there's, and I believe too, like, you shouldn't really compromise on your core tenets of things, because that's what makes it what it is. But very much like Nishi Sensei, you do have to sometimes ease on the intensity. I don't think I would have as many people coming back on the second class with the beginners if I went full oyakoni and just had them running up and down the gym for the rest of the session. I've warmed them up to that, but yeah, I think sometimes the intensity of the drill has to sometimes change, or what you're doing sometimes initially in terms of just the actual drills and techniques that you're teaching. But yeah, no, I would say I haven't had to compromise either in that sense. So.
Kyle or David, do you have anything you'd like to add? No, I'm going to take a pause. We have one more question that we can go to, and I'd like everyone to answer this because I think it's a good view of the diverse nature of the dojos in the CKF. So this is from Warren Ho. I happen to know he's from South Africa, so thank you for joining us at this time. I'm going to rephrase your question a little bit and just ask in general, for each of you, how are you financially set up? You have to pay rent somehow, you need to collect funds. Maybe you're part of a community center, maybe you have to do it all yourself. It'd be interesting to just get a view of how you're able to maintain your dojo when money is involved. So I'm going to start again from how we started before, east to west. So Wilson, can you start us off?
Certainly, thank you. So we're nonprofit. We're totally set up to be, and my kind of opinion with when I was running the dojo was to make it as accessible as possible to as many people as we could. So the main thing that I always say was, as long as the floor time's covered, that's where I set my kind of point. A lot of the overhead and things like that, I just consider that just like donating my time, whether it's paying to keep the web page up, or sometimes running a few promotions on Facebook, sometimes just getting some extra club equipment, things like that. So I keep ours running as a nonprofit. And yeah, so.
Okay, thank you. David, how are you set up?
When we first started, I made an objective. We only had, say, sort of X amount of students, and I knew that there was going to be some financial stress on myself. I've never had a problem putting money down for kendo. I mean, for an example, just to fly out to JCCC 15, 16 years ago and take part in those tournaments, those flights were $1,000, hotels. I mean, it's a very expensive men that strikes you in the head. As a $500 man every time you get hit. But it's a very important experience. Now, when I opened up the club, I knew that there was going to be some sort of risk as well. So what I started out by doing was saying, we're going to take, there were 6 or 7 of us. We needed a couple hours a week to practice. 80% of my funds would dictate how much time I could spend practicing. And from there, I added time as membership grew. And then I took a look back over, say, a year and then 2 years and found my mean average. And it looks to be, this is kind of what the coffers or the financial statements are going to look like yearly. I think that this is a set schedule. And we begin to add things like 6 a.m. Asageko Sunday mornings is a kind of a feature of Tesshin. We have people come in from sort of Brandon and stay at my house so they could practice the next day and things of that nature. But that's how we set it up. I will use 80% of the funds for as much floor time as possible. And what I've learned is the more floor time that I put out there for people, the dojo time, it's being absorbed. So that's the goal. And then with the extra 20%, you always need to have that sort of buffer in the accounts. And sometimes we can bring a sensei in, sometimes we'll use it, but we run as a nonprofit as well.
Cool. Yeah, the 80-20 rule appears in almost everything. Kyle, how are you set up?
We are as a nonprofit for now. So, but some of the challenges I noticed was in the beginning, I have no sense of financial thinking, right? So when I was teaching Kendo first time, I paid for my gym and membership was basically free. And with that happening, I didn't attract any students because it was free. they didn't bother like coming. They didn't value it that much. But surprisingly, I increased the membership fees. There's more students coming. So, which was odd because, that's opposite of what I thought. But with that said, that like I tried to raise the fees in covers to inviting senseis from Toronto or Vancouver area to run the seminar, right? That for instance, one time we invited Murao sensei for a kashiku, right? So we had to do a fundraising and stuff. So, but I think that's it's very ongoing challenge as to keep the dojo as non-profit, because there's only a certain point where the fund is limited, right? And one time I had a chance to visit judo tournament because one of my students' kids was playing judo. When I went to judo tournament, it was just there were so many sponsorships and there's a lot of money and there's tournaments was great. And I thought, like non-profit is good, but I think I feel like as a leader, more financial stability is way better to run and run through events and those seminars. So it's very like still ongoing challenge for me of how we should raise the funds, right? Like Dave Weston said.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, we're at time. I want to give Victor a chance to respond. So we have 2 nonprofits and 1 just setting up rental and collections. And Victor, can you just briefly tell us how you're set up financially?
Yeah, just a quick hello to Warren. Thanks for the question, fellow 2014 Kitamoto member. We're a nonprofit organization. We all have daytime jobs, so we do this as a passion. So twice a week, we rent a community or a city-based facility with reasonable rates. So I feel if we started to become a profit-oriented, then we take away from our main jobs, and then we probably start to treat Kendo as a little bit more a business. So that's why I would not ever become a for-profit club. But yeah, so that's our philosophy here in Kelowna.
Great, thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. If there was any questions that we missed, or if we gone over time, or if I interrupted you, that's all my fault. It's on me. But I think the panelists did really great explaining their situation, and I think that there's still a lot more that we can learn from them. So I'm sure you all are open to being connected if anyone has additional questions about how to start a dojo, how to maintain a community, and generally the challenges and opportunities in a remote area. Yeah, so thank you very much.